Hello and welcome everyone at a new episode of the Pure Gospel on the Flat Earth. My name is Joke Elsinga and today we're going to talk about biblical brotherhood. Recently I talked to someone who I used to reach out with before, and he told me that he didn't like to call me his brother. And this was because he used to be part of the Jehovah's Witnesses before, and at a certain moment when he pointed out some flaws and falsehoods in their teachings, they disfellowshipped him. He was not really welcome anymore and he wasn't considered a brother anymore. This is an important thing when it comes to the biblical brotherhood. So is it even possible to discover who your real biblical brother or sister is? And how does this relate to regular family structures? What we know about family structures? Well, it's important to address this, so that's what we're going to do during this video. What we know from regular family structures is that when you have brothers and sisters, you have kind of the same parents. It might be the case that you are adopted, anyhow you consider certain people to be your parents and they introduce you to all kind of customs. Maybe you drink tea at the same time, you like the same food maybe, you share a certain background and you share quite some time with one another. That is why you recognize yourself in the others. Ultimately, all humans are related, namely via Adam, the first man, and that is also what we read in Malachi 2 verse 10, where we read, "Do we not all have one Father? Did not one God create us?" Then you have evolutionists who want to promote the idea of relativism, which is also the basis basically for the whole earth belief, why people are so attached to that, and they want to ridicule those who believe that we descended from Adam and who say that certain kind of animals of the same kind, they share a common ancestor, namely for instance all dogs, they are kind of related. They say, this must imply some form of incest then. But they fail to notice that they believe that we all descended from a rock.
I said, I believe 6,000 years ago God made everything, and 4,400 years ago there was a flood when, everything got destroyed in the flood. And then Noah had two of each kind, not species, kind on the ark. Now since then there's been a whole lot of new varieties produced. And then I told them what they believe, because most of them don't know what they believe. You got to tell them, I said, you guys believe 20 billion years ago Big Bang, 4.6 billion years ago the earth cooled down, it rained on the rocks for millions of years, turned them into soup, and the soup came alive 3 billion years ago. This one professor was getting very angry. I seem to do that to them. He said, Mr. Hovind, do you realize there are nearly 400 varieties of dogs in the world today? I said, sir, I have no idea how many, but 400 sounds good. He said, do you mean to tell me that you believe all those dogs came from 2 dogs on Noah's Ark? You want me to believe that? I said, sir, would you look at what you're teaching your students? You're teaching your students that all those dogs came from a rock.
Obviously, this pseudoscience called the evolutionary theory is a load of crap, and as I said, it is just to support relativism, and that is also what we will touch upon a little bit in the rest of the video, because what it means to be a real brother or sister in the faith is that you are a brother of Christ, that you trust him, and you put your trust in his reconciliation work, that you acknowledge the restoration plan of the Most High. That is also called the gospel of the kingdom, basically. That's the bigger restoration plan of the Most High. Christ preached that, so you have to be passionate about that. You also should want to be more similar to Christ, you see him as your leader, you want to conform like him, want to behave in the same way, want to have the same mindset, serve others in love, be humble, and not attached to worldly things and how the world works right now. So it's very important that you have that ingrained, basically. The fear of God, obviously, which drove Christ in the things he did, doing the will of the Most High and doing the will of Christ. And that is basically the same kind of thing, because Christ and the Father have the same mindset. At a certain moment, Christ was asked by his disciples, "Show us the Father." He said, well, if you see me, you see the Father. Because he was operating in the same mindset. It did not mean that he looked the same, but the character of the Most High was reflected in his ambassador, Christ. That should also be the case with us. If people look at us, they should see something of Christ's mindset coming to them. They should recognize, oh, he is a brother of Christ. So this makes sense. And if you encounter someone who is also a follower of Christ, you will recognize the mindset of Christ in that person, and that creates a very special bond. Actually, it also works that way with people who are very worldly and very corrupt and compromised and satanic. You also discover a certain kind of mindset which goes anti-God and anti-Christ. Well, then you have also those people who act as if they are followers of Christ, but deny the real power that could make them godly. They have only a form of godliness, but they deny the power thereof. Well, what is typical for those kind of people is that usually they will resort to some form of relativism, which also obviously will apply to most people who are on the broad way that leads to destruction. Most people who go the ways of the world, who are worldly, hold on to lies and defend them, and so that is typical, that they will always ultimately resort to some kind of relativism, that they will come up with excuses for sin, and that they ultimately will be attached to things of this world. What we want for our viewers, obviously, is that they will have their hearts being reconciled with the Most High, that they know that they solely depend upon grace, and that will drive them, will motivate them to do their duties to Christ and to the Most High. You have many people who are fake, who say, we need to live from grace, and then they don't want to testify about God and don't testify about the truth, and just be tolerant to how the world works right now. And that's basically because they are worldly and just use grace basically as some kind of license for sin. And we don't want this for our viewers. So I just want to encourage you as my viewers with one particular verse from the Bible, and this is from, or a passage actually, but it is from Hebrews 2 verse 10 up to 12. In bringing many sons and daughters to glory, it was fitting that God, for whom and through whom everything exists, should make the pioneer of their salvation perfect through what he suffered. Both the one who makes people holy and those who are made holy are of the same family. So Yeshua is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters. He says, I will declare your name to my brothers and sisters. In the assembly I will sing your praises. That is obviously what we are aiming for, that at the day of the return of Christ, he will acknowledge us as his brothers and sisters in front of the angels and in front of the Most High, and that he is not ashamed of doing so. So in order for that to happen is we need to be prepared, and we need to focus on that end goal and focus on Christ and his will, acknowledging our dependency upon him and the Most High always, and that God is able to do great works through us, and that obviously we need to do his will, which involves promoting the restoration plan, doing this call for repentance. So that is all involved into our duty, basically. So that is what we want to say. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed, if you've learned something. If you want extra information or you just want to get in touch, just drop something in the comment box. That would be awesome. And we hope to see you in the next episode of the Pure Gospel on the Flat Earth.